Kuwait. For 10 hours, parts of the 3rd Infantry Brigade had charged across the desert in a formation 4 kilometers wide. This was hard, relentless driving, taking the column 120 miles deep inside Iraq.
Never has a mechanized force moved so fast and so far.
Speed matters, and the Americans are determined to finish this controversial war next week.
There is multiple shell injury, multiple traumas to the chest, to the abdomen, to the skull, to the limbs.
Given the ferocity of the explosions, it's little wonder that flimsily built houses are unable to withstand the blasts. The authorities say that this was an orphanage. It suggests that some of the explosions, very loud intermittent explosions that we heard, were trying to take out parts of the electricity grid, and one of the banks of the Tigris River was completely dark.
A cruise missile launches from an American warship and carries its load of high explosive deep into Iraq. We hear a lot about why the coalition is doing this, but after 3 days of war, we still don't really know what effect it's having. So all eyes were on this man today, General Tommy Franks, commander of the entire operation. The waiting media were hoping to learn some real detail about what's happening. Instead, the general preferred to talk about what's to come.
This will be a campaign unlike any other in history. A campaign characterized by shock, by surprise, by flexibility, by the employment of precise munitions on a scale never before seen, and by the application of overwhelming force.
The general showed what he claimed were lines of Iraqi soldiers waiting to surrender. He also produced video of attacks by special forces. It all gave an impression of Allied action and Iraqi collapse. But as to real facts, well, there weren't many. So after this first briefing, what do we know about this war? Well, let's look at the attacks on Baghdad. Now, one target was the Republican Palace right in the centre. Another, the headquarters of the Ba'ath Party, Saddam's political network. A third, the intelligence building. Now, in theory, civilian areas are meant to be safe. Meant to be. That's why the electricity system is supposed to be untouched, though tonight some areas did lose power. And the water is running. So though the bombing is highly controversial, coalition leaders insist it is selective.
In considering every pre-planned target, we go through a rigorous process of weighing the military advantage against the danger to civilian life and property. I personally oversee this process.
That's the bombing, but what do we know about those ground offensives down in the south? Well, the Americans claim they've seized Nasiriyah. There was fighting there, but their objective is to pass on by on their way to Baghdad. Now, near Basra, the American Marines also faced a battle on their way north to the capital. British forces are now outside the city. They were not sure of the local reaction. And at Qasr, the key port, British and American forces have had a harder time than expected with what are called pockets of resistance. This really is the fog of war. Maybe confusion is part of the strategy. Iraqi soldiers are surrendering, obviously, but there were reports which we can't confirm of an entire division of 8,000 soldiers giving up. This is just the kind of story designed to inspire collapse. And what about the Iraqi leader himself, Saddam Hussein, and his key commanders? Are they dead or alive? Well, General Frank says he doesn't know, but questions about them must have the effect of spreading doubt throughout the Iraqi forces. In this war, even confusion has become a weapon.
Sea King helicopters flying from the carrier HMS Ark Royal were involved in the accident. 6 of those who died were British naval aircrew, the 7th an American US Navy officer. Terry Lloyd, his cameraman Fred Nerak and translator Hussein Othman were travelling to the city of Basra when they came under fire. Another cameraman travelling with them was injured.
2,500 miles from Iraq, here in the UK, anger at the human cost of war and frustration. Many believe their voice has been ignored. Most here are anti-Saddam, but don't think war is the way to deal with him. Their protest now is about damage limitation.
I think the government very much hoped that once the war started that public opinion would swing behind them. This demonstration shows that it's not the case, that a majority of people have looked at the pictures from Baghdad and think that by every day that we shorten this war, we can save people's lives.
The protest in London was big. 200,000 people according to police. Organisers say twice that. But either way, it's still far fewer than last month's anti-war protest, which drew at least 700,000. Young people newly politicised, and many Muslims.
Does it worry you that there are now troops and people dying in this war?
My heart goes out to anybody who's lost a loved one. But that does not make me apathetic. That makes me more determined to stop this from carrying on.
Elsewhere, there were protests in Wolverhampton, in Edinburgh and a host of other towns and cities, and at RAF Fairford, from where American aircraft have been leaving daily to bomb Iraq. Abroad too, in Gaza, a pro-Saddam protest, thousands chanting support for the Iraqi leader. In Switzerland, demonstrators clashed with police. In Norway too there was trouble, and in dozens of other cities worldwide there were protests.
Stop the war!
The London demonstration ended with a rally. With war underway, fewer leading politicians joined the protest. Those here vowed to keep up pressure, hoping to bring hostilities to a swift close. Tonight, several hundred protesters were dispersed by riot police, though the main demonstration had been peaceful.
In Iraq, a part of the country which Saddam does not control. But reports that around 1,000 Turkish commandos may have crossed into northern Iraq, ignoring heavy American pressure, have sounded the alarm in Washington and London.
We are aware that a small Turkish force has gone into the north of Iraq. The Turks have made clear that they are only concerned to prevent instability along that border area, and to the extent that their forces carry out those limited operations, then clearly we are relaxed about it.
So what's the worry? Well, Turkey and Iraq both have substantial Kurdish minorities straddling the border. For years, Turkey has suppressed Kurds there, demanding autonomy. Now Turkey fears Iraqi Kurds will be stronger after Saddam, and pressure for an independent Kurdish state will threaten Turkey's sovereignty. The Kurds of northern Iraq distrust Turkey. There's a real risk any Turkish troops inside the territory could clash with Kurdish forces. A disastrous new war within the larger Iraqi war.
Military intervention from any of our neighbors will invite chaos, will invite instability. One neighbor getting into Iraq will mean other neighbors will get into Iraq, and that can only complicate the transition from dictatorship to democracy.
For now, Kurdish forces are training to take on their principal enemy, the remnants of Saddam's regime. The US and Britain are determined to stop them fighting Turkish troops instead. But with relations between Turkey and Washington at an all-time low, the dangers are very real.